This podcast contains graphic content that may be distressing to some listeners. Listener discretion is strongly advised. If you or someone you know is in crisis or needs support, please contact the relevant mental health or emergency services in your area. Help is available, and you're not alone.
If you're old enough to remember when phones had cords and the only thing that went viral was a cold, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Big 6-0 with Kaylee Harris and Guy Rawlinson. Because who better to discuss life's second act than two people who still think mature is a type of cheese?
Welcome to the Big 6-0 podcast. I'm Guy Rawlinson, and of course, sitting next to me is my partner in childhood crime, Kaylee Harris.
With my Vegemite triangles ready to go. How are you?
Don't even get in the way of a woman and a lunch order. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. You're not going to steal my space food sticks anymore.
Don't go there. Hey, look, today we've got a really interesting. This is a woman I'd spoken to before in another life, essentially. But today's guest is someone whose life really does read like a book. In fact, she's actually written a couple of books as well. She's a writer, a speaker. She's an adult educator, trauma survivor.
6 books, can I just point out?
Thank you.
Yep.
And an award-winning filmmaker on top of all of that. From a childhood marked by pain to a lifetime dedicated to healing, our guest really is the definition of transformation. And as I said, I got to know her a little bit just over 2 years ago, I think now, when we had a chat while I was producing a series, a podcast connected with mental health. From her early days as a chaplain with the RAN through to leading post-trauma support with New South Wales Police Force, and her memoir-inspired film Say My Name, which is now won
94
international awards. Her voice is helping people around the world find a light in sometimes some of the darkest places. Mel Baker, welcome.
Thank you so much. Great to see you both.
Mel, if I can just kick things off, your creative journey, whether it was books and film, it started very early because I remember reading that you'd written some music by the age of 7, a book at 9, you'd been into acting, artwork, all that sort of things. How did you discover that storytelling would be part and parcel of actually conveying something to people and your life?
I think as a child, I don't think I ever saw it as storytelling. It was more my outlet in the world that I needed to take away from what was happening to me. And sort of like, rather than internalize all that pain, to externalize it and write and act and be creative, but then I'm naturally born creative as well. Like, I had amazing imagination as well. I have all these rooms in my mind, imagination of where I could go to do different things, like analysis and a garden room to escape to and all sorts of things. I was always imaginative and creative.
So painting, storytelling, music, was there something that sort of resonated with you more, or was it just a combination of everything which gave you that escape?
I think it was everything, because I'm someone who gets bored really easily. And school did not do anything for me at all. I was always acting up because it wasn't enough. I needed more. I wanted more learning, and I think doing things with my hands and writing was probably my most favourite. Like, I wrote as soon as I knew how to write a word, and I was scribbling pages, have stacks of books, like pages at home of my childhood, all written, that I had to keep on hiding because, and sometimes writing code as well, because otherwise my father would.
Is that right?
Mm.
Well, let's talk about that. We need to go back for people who don't know your story. Can you tell us about that pain and what happened to you?
My mum abandoned me as a baby. She had 2 kids before me, so they were 10 years older. And my father grew me up, and I was always a beautiful princess to him, and like up to about 4. And then something happened, and you can never know the why. But I'd love to go know why, but he crossed that line and sexually abused me from 4 to 12. And around 7 to 9, he also sort of played a game of roulette, and whoever won with his business associates, whoever won that roulette would win me. It was the only time I would be in a dress, a white dress. It was sort of like my blanket is left at the floor, and I was be told to behave. I would have to roll the ball in the roulette wheel, and he would spin it. And the men would say I would have red or black or odd or even. There was 4 other men with him. And sometimes I would have to be passed to 2 men that night.
So we're talking an actual roulette table, like a roulette wheel. Yeah, okay,
in
on
a
the
lounge
table.
room, yeah.
And did you get to spin it, or who spun it? Your dad or the people? Or
I had to. I was ordered to put the balls in and spin it.
So it's almost like, did you take that on board then as being somehow you were contributing to this abuse because you got to choose who abused you?
I never thought of it like that. Yeah. I was too young to understand. Like in the beginning, I had no idea. Like I just thought it was a party to my life at that stage because I'd been abused by him for 3 years, and I'm starting to think at 7, I don't think this is right. I don't think this is what Father's supposed to do, but I had no other reason not to believe that before that, because it's not like I've gone into other families and seen other families act. And it was always when my mum wasn't home. She was travelling a lot.
Is this something that at school, I mean, was there a dawning? Did you talk to other kids at school? You said, you were 7. You didn't know that there was some rationalisation at that point, or was it all of a sudden, oh, no, I've realised that this isn't right. No one else that I know. I mean, did you have friends? What?
Yeah, I felt like I couldn't invite friends home from primary school because I didn't want them to be harmed. I felt like if they were there, they may be harmed too. So it was like I was protecting other kids, but that means I missed out all my life. But I was silenced by them and their secrets. Like they told me that I can't tell anybody and that my dog would be harmed. And then when my brother actually did find out later and caught us in bed, he was harmed and kicked out of home. And so it was just this silence, really. So at school, the first time it happened with the group of men in the room, which I call the ring in my book, I was in 2nd grade at school, and they asked all the kids who wanted to go to the bathroom, go to the toilets before you leave school, to go with the teacher. And I didn't, and I stood behind my desk at the back, and I just weed on the floor. It was like I was just so silenced, I couldn't even move. I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't want to go home because that was the night before, and I thought I don't want to go home. So it was just like I was stuck in this place.
What year are we talking this was happening? A decade year?
In the 70s.
Okay.
And was school an escape, and you desperately wanted to stay there, and there was just to be able to have to go home?
Yeah. School was an escape in a lot of ways, but then it was also a place where I acted out because I wanted adults to ask me the right questions, and they wouldn't ask me the right questions.
So just the fear of retribution or what may happen prevented you from actually saying anything? Or is it because you're a child and you thought, well, no one will believe me? Or
there was like any time I tried to do anything. Like, say, there was one time I had a couple of blood drops on my pajamas, and I thought I could finally use this. When Mum comes home, I can tell her, like, look, I'm bleeding to death, I said to her. Like, I didn't understand it in any other way. And then she said, don't be ridiculous. And I thought that would be the thing that finally she may ask questions and know what's going on. But the thing is that Dad will always get there beforehand and say whatever he wants the story to be. And then Mum will never believe me because he's already got there first. And that would be the same with teachers, anybody else, adults. His best friend, I was always in his company with, he was a beautiful man who lived across the road. He would always find out other things, so I could never tell him. So it was just like he was always a step ahead of me. And I would use my intelligence in any way to try to get around, in front, like a step ahead of him, but he was always.
And how long did this continue before you decided to either have, enough bravery to say, I need to do something, I have to do X, Y, Z to escape this?
From about that age at 7 was a really turning point when all that started. When he pulled me into his own room, I was fighting back. I was grabbing the doorways, like trying to kick him and everything, but it was nothing I could do to take away the harm that he was going to do with me. And all I figured out, my mum kept on saying I was a mistake. So his actions were telling me that I'm nothing, I'm not worthy of anything. And they keep on telling me I'm going to grow to be nothing. You're not worth anything. So I had that in my head, thinking that's all I was worth. Like, was this abuse? I didn't know how to get out of it.
And this was until you were 12?
Yeah, it stopped at 11 at home that's when my brother walked in.
Okay. What happened then? Take us through what happened after that.
He was kicked out of home, and because then Dad knew that someone else knew, it just he went more violent towards me. So I would then get bruises on my ribs and arms.
Would he physically
would assault me. And then there was emotional manipulation type thing. And then one other sexual incident happened when we were in Lord Howe Island when I was 12 and in the forest, and that was a vicious assault, and that I couldn't sit down for a week, say. And that was the last time that happened. And then by that stage I could be out of the house. I'm in high school, I'm out of the home as much as I can. Played a lot of netball and sports, so I didn't have to go home. And then at 15, one drunken night, he was drunk all the time, like from 11 o'clock in the morning until he went to bed, through this whole time. The time that I got home late, he came out of the bed drunk. I had woken him up, and he came out with his pistol with the bullets in it and was like putting it right to my heart. And I'm trying to convince him that I'm your youngest daughter, and I didn't know whether he knew that or not, but he was convinced to shoot the intruder, and I just knew I had to punch him out.
So he had no idea?
I don't know. I can't.
So he held a gun physically, a loaded gun to you?
Yeah. And I that click you hear?
Yeah, when the gun is cocked.
Yeah. I keep hearing that throughout my whole life, like that click doesn't go away. It was the only thing I knew how to get out of that situation was I had to punch him out.
So you punched him and he's gone down?
He's gone down, and I empty the bullets. Then I now knowing that it's full loaded. Emptied the bullets, put it in between in the cupboard behind me between layers so he couldn't find anything, and put a blanket over him and went to bed.
So what, after this has happened, were you thinking about what I need to do? I need to get out of this environment. Had you made plans in advance and thinking, this I need to, what's the story?
Yeah, so I'm 15, still in year 10, and I'm just thinking I just got to finish school and get a job and move out. That's my plan. So given that I was always good at art, I went into graphic arts. So I got an apprentice job. But I never quite, the 9 months I was doing that, I never quite could find the right place to get out or the right person to live with. So I was still stuck at home. And then at this workplace, then I was sexually assaulted by a man I worked with who was married with 2 kids.
Oh, my gosh.
So I just felt
You're starting to wonder, like, what is it?
Yeah, what is it about me?
Yeah.
It's like I have a scent or something, or
Yeah.
I'm giving off something.
Yeah.
And later in my 30s, I went to the police to do a statement against these men. And they said to me, it's actually really normal for a child being sexually abused, that they have, especially teenager, abuse from others. That always occurs. And I thought, I didn't know that. But I could understand it because that's exactly what happened. But after I lost that job at 16, I was then thrown out of home, and I was then on the streets of Sydney, living under the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
And that's one of your books, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that led to the film that's won so many 93 awards so far. Tell us the catalyst for the book, and then how that sort of evolved into what's now been an award-winning film as well, short film.
Well, I wanted to, everything that I do, like you said in the introduction, I want to do it for healing and for inspiring people. And if there's so many millions of men and women who have gone through childhood abuse, and if I can be a voice to people and to inspire them and say, you can find hope, you can find courage, you can determine resilient and move past this and find yourself on the other side of this. And so I write my books for that reason. So I'm doing a trilogy of my life story because there's so much more than just my first 18 years, which was the first book, Sleeping Under the Bridge. So I did the film, that was published in 2022, and then did the film shortly after that and into 2023. And that was sort of more to do like an ad, so to speak, for the trilogy series so that feature films could be made. So I'm in the process of that at the moment, and just sent to the publisher the second book, which is 18 to 38, sort of some of my time in the police, working through my childhood stuff in therapy. And it's a really vulnerable book. I've just finished writing it last week, and it's probably the most vulnerable I've ever been with people, because I feel if I can be vulnerable about what I went through in life and how I moved past that, then that is surely a healing tool for others.
So just getting back into, I feel like we've missed a bit here, that you were living under the bridge, in the Harbour Bridge, and you were 16 and you were on the streets, homeless. Tell us about that time. How did you get from there to moving forward a bit? I understand, because I watched the film and there was some self-harm there as well. Can you just talk us through that? Little part of your life?
Yeah, sure. The short film, 13 minutes only can do a little snippet of my story. But certainly every night on the street, just like at home, was just so hard. You don't know what's going to happen.
It was King's Cross in the 70s, right?
Yeah. In the 80s.
In the 80s, yeah, sorry, yeah, in the city. And it was, I mean, we all know what the 80s were like. People our generation, certainly. And Sydney at that time was was a different place, wasn't it?
It was. And there wasn't really any, like John Talbot Ministries had a youth hostel for men in that stage, but there was nothing really for women. There was no beds I could ever find. But I was really good at improvisation. So I would know how to, from my childhood, I had the skill of being invisible. And I could walk into the bottom of a hotel or something. They have the bathrooms and a shower downstairs, but you got to know where it is. I would scout it out, and I would go in there to have a shower every few days. I'd know where to get clothes from Central Station, so I have new clothes from the suitcases left over and lost and found. I would walk around and stay as much as I can before I could find at night.
So what did you see your future at that point, at that moment? What did you see your future looking like? Or did you think, it's desperation?
The only thing that I held on to every day for it was around 7 months was hope. Until hope ran out, or towards the end, and that's when I got more suicidal, and I just felt like I can't live like this anymore, and I can't go home, and I have nowhere else to go. So what do I do? And I just felt like that was the end. But every time I tried to, not more self-harm, but just like die, something would happen. The first time it happened, I was at a dead-end street in Liverpool at midnight. And that time in the 80s, no one lived in the city really in the 80s. And there was nobody around in that area. And I had the knife wound still really bad. And so I decided, well, I'll just use a knife and put it in my stomach. It wouldn't matter if I make any more. And I was just about to, I had the pinpoint on my stomach. And then a man just appeared before me with these beautiful glass-like eyes. And no one in my life has really ever looked into my eyes and really noticed me as a person. And this man did. He looked into my eyes and I saw his crystal-like eyes, and it just made me forget all that I am. And I wanted death so badly right then and there that when I looked into his eyes, all I could see was life. And all I could feel was life. It was the most amazing experience. And then he was gone. And I looked up everywhere, couldn't find anybody around.
Oh, you do it all.
And I thought, that's an angel or something.
Yeah.
That's the only
thing. Do you think it was someone, or do you think it was a spiritual thing?
I think it was a spiritual thing, and it was an angel or something like that, a spiritual realm or something appeared to me saying, you're going to keep on living here. And
so how did that progress from there? Like, what did all of a sudden there was a hope that what happened?
There was hope actually, because I looked in the paper, found a graphic arts job, went for an interview, and the most amazing thing is where I was in that alley where they pick up the printing was that firm.
Wow.
That was their back door I was at.
Oh my goodness.
And within a few days I was working there.
Wow.
Just things like that happen.
It's the stuff books are written about, isn't it?
But that's my life. That's my life story. Like, if I'm more open to to the universe and what's going on and feeling around me, because I've learned that I'm a sensitive soul. I'm in touch with nature. I understand nature with everything, because that was really my friend, if you can say, growing up.
Let's talk a little bit about Say My Name, the short film. How hard was it to go back to the cross? How hard was it to relive those experiences? And also with the crew that you probably had to handpick. How hard was it to find people that had that empathy and could understand the message that you were trying to convey in that?
Getting the people was easy because if you open your doors, you put out there what you want, the right people came and they did in a synchronicity way, in everything from pre-production right through to post-production. It was an incredible journey, and everyone was great for the purpose of what we had to pull together as a team on a very small budget, which was mine. Going back to King's Cross was probably the hardest because I hadn't done that. I'd worked in the Navy down the road for a while, but I always avoided the area. And doing night shots at King's Cross, and because I was in chronic pain with my knees, I was in terrible situation for 3 days. We were shooting 15 hours a day. And by the third night, where I'm sitting on the ground on King's Cross, looking at it from a very different perspective. And I just had to push all that aside. I can't deal with this because I have a young crew. It was mainly debut cast and crew and young people. And I wanted to make sure all the way along of what we're doing, are you okay? And let's talk about that scene. And so I was wanting to be a counsellor on, as well as a consultant on set. So it was really important to me.
What about tell us about your work with the police and the Navy. What kind of work were you doing?
So as a chaplain, a lot of people don't understand chaplaincy. I'm not a religious person at all. I was a Baptist minister. But for me, chaplaincy is about pre-counselling. It's walking alongside people and guiding and nurturing them, sustaining them through whatever they're going through at work or at home. And because one of my mottos is I want to help people to be the best they can be. Chaplaincy was a way in for me that I could do that. And for the police, I was a lead chaplain in post-trauma support, so I was working on the front line throughout the whole of New South Wales, going to support groups that we had established across the state and going to other death scenes and other critical incidents and being there with the police through that.
Is that difficult for you to do?
I know how to numb myself and compartmentalise very well. Talk about one of the rooms that I have is I have a photographic memory, visual. So I have a filing cabinet in my head, and I would visualise someone's story that they told me, and I never want them to repeat that story because that's hard for them to do. So I'd put that in their filing cabinet in my head and remember that, and so they can never have to repeat it, and then we can start off wherever we were in the next session that they want to talk about. And I found that was really important. So I was holding hundreds of stories in my mind, and then keeping that when I went into the Navy as a chaplain after I'd finished my Doctor of Education, and I was poached to go to the Navy, and then having all the military stories in my head.
So how does someone like yourself that has to give so much to others, knowing your backstory and what you do for other people, how does Mel Baker care for herself? Where does she fit on the food chain of looking after herself?
When I was at the police, right at the bottom. and the Navy, I was really, really bad at caring for myself. I think through all my 20s and 30s, 40s, I did not know my needs and wants still. I was never taught anything as a child. I grew myself up through all that loneliness and abuse and stuff. So I had to work out life for myself. And that life was very different to what most people learn how to do. And I learned from watching others. And so that was sort of really hard then to put myself into what do I need to do for me? It was always, how do I protect myself? How do I move forward? And how do I help others? Like, it was never, there was never anything else in time for that.
And that how you care for yourself, it doesn't matter whether what you're going through. You can be in your 60s. It's a mental health thing too, where you have to work it out for yourself sometimes. Tell us about the book. You've said you've just finished
Book two.
Book two. Tell us about that.
Yeah, building the bridge is now become a metaphor. So the bridge is nothing of a structure that I'm sleeping under, but it's still a protection place, and it's still something that I'm learning to build in my 20s and 30s about understanding who I am through all this, finding me, and in helping others through that. And then it ends on a cliffhanger. I'll only give you the last chapter is called More Than 9 Lives. So you can understand I have had many lives. I think by this stage I've had probably 20 near-death experiences in my life. So I'm definitely not a cat. And, you know, this decade's been so hard. And I look forward to writing book 3, which is Climbing the Bridge, and which is sort of the Navy stuff and the grand finale of where I end up.
If there's a message from your lived experiences, you're a survivor, and what you've experienced in your life, what would be that to those that have remained silent, whether it's for years or decades? What would be your message for those people?
I think the biggest thing I've learnt is that what is hidden is dangerous. And so that's including our own silence and not standing up in any way for what anyone has done to us. And that could be just going into therapy or to talk with a friend, but getting out what's in us, out of us, because that's really quite dangerous for all, you know, just even health, for stress, for cortisol levels, for I think I've had cortisol probably in my system all my life. But it's so important just to let that go. And one of the biggest things I know I've done is the last in my chain of my family, I've stopped that generation of abuse.
That's a massively powerful message, but a massively powerful story. And thank you so much for sharing it with us on the Big 60. If people want to find out more about whether it's Say My Name, Living Under the Bridge, or what's happening, is there somewhere that they can check out?
Yeah, I've got 5 websites, but probably the best one is drmelbakerbooks.com.
drmelbakerbooks.com. That's a nice, easy one to remember. Mel, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's a very powerful message, and hopefully I'm sure it will bring some comfort to a lot of people.
Hopefully, yeah. Just keep believing in yourself. That's a really important thing too.
Mel, thanks so much again.
The views and opinions expressed on the Big 60 are personal and reflect those of the hosts and guests. They do not represent the views or positions of any affiliated organisations or companies. This podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for guidance on any personal matters.
And before we go, let's give credit where credit is due. Kaylee Harris and I came up with all the genius content for this week's episode. Our producer, Nick Abood, well, he keeps the lights on and makes sure we don't accidentally upload a cat video instead of a podcast. So thanks for keeping us on track, Nick. Nick?